the old records of this age have taken a darker turn. Hao Jing's scheme ended beneath Ling Han's fist, yet the greater world has descended into something far more dangerous than one man's betrayal. Heavenly Venerates now hunt one another for their seals. Sixth-tier giants have fallen, and even the strongest clans are binding themselves together for survival. While Ling Han remains in long seclusion near the Lin Clan, a marriage alliance brings the arrogant Rong Xinkuan to Ling City, with Jiuwu Heavenly Venerate whispering poison at his side and a coveted Heavenly Venerable Seal fixed firmly in their sights. Ah, those footsteps outside sound suspiciously familiar. Someone warmed the wine and moved the chessboard before our wandering daoists claim they were only passing by and somehow stay until sunrise again. The jianghu has become murderous enough without us drinking cold tea, so gather close and hear what trouble has just marched straight to Ling Han's front gate. Ling Han let out a long, helpless sigh. After all these years, Hu Nu was still Hu Nu, restless, fearless, and forever capable of turning the smallest opportunity into a grand adventure. No matter how high his cultivation climbed, somehow there were still moments when he felt like the one forced to watch over her. But when his gaze followed the direction Hao Jing had disappeared, that trace of amusement vanished. A cold gleam settled in Ling Han's eyes. At first, Ling Han had watched Hao Jing simply because he instinctively disliked anyone circling around his daughter. Yet what he discovered went far beyond an over-enthusiastic pursuer. Hao Jing coveted Ling Shi, harbored designs involving the Empress, and even dared to set his sights upon Ling Han's Heavenly Venerable Seals. That last point changed everything. Pursuing someone was one matter. Plotting for Heavenly Venerable Seals meant Hao Jing was no longer merely troublesome. He had begun calculating Ling Han's death and the division of the treasures left behind afterward. Ling Han quietly pieced together everything he had overheard. Hao Jing knew perfectly well how terrifying Ling Han was, so he had restrained himself instead of attacking recklessly. His answer was to seek reinforcement from a certain senior brother Luo Tongfang, a first-tier Heavenly Venerate whose name Ling Han had heard before. Yet even that raised another question. A mere first-tier Heavenly Venerate could not possibly give Hao Jing such confidence. Luo Tongfang himself had apparently gone searching for something called blood clay. If Hao Jing believed this mysterious substance could compensate for the enormous gulf between Ling Han's apparent cultivation and his true battle strength, then the blood clay was almost certainly the real killing move. Ling Han was confident, but confidence had never meant charging blindly into an unknown trap.
Should Niu capture him right now?
Excitement practically radiated from Hu Nu. To her, waiting for enemies to finish plotting was clearly less enjoyable than simply beating them first.
No, we'll wait until senior brother Luo arrives, then capture both of them together.
Ling Han spread his divine sense across the entirety of Ling City. Against such perception, even a first-tier Heavenly Venerate who concealed his aura with utmost care would struggle to enter unnoticed. This was the terrifying difference between a Heavenly Venerate merely existing and one who had deliberately focused his attention on a target. Once Ling Han began watching the board, Hao Jing's supposed secrecy became little more than a performance carried out beneath the eyes of the hunter. 4 years passed. Then, without warning, something tugged at Ling Han's consciousness. Through the vast net of his divine sense, he detected a Heavenly Venerate slipping into the city. The intruder's concealment was exquisite. He had reduced himself to something no more conspicuous than a speck of dust resting upon a cart of goods entering Ling City. For roughly 2 hours he remained hidden. Only afterward did he transform into the appearance of an ascending origin tier cultivator and casually make his way toward the western district. A cold smile appeared on Ling Han's face. Every day, Hao Jing spent a short period inside a tea house in the city's west. There could be little doubt now. The tea house was their rendezvous point. Without raising the slightest disturbance, Ling Han brought Hu Nu with him and followed, As expected, the mysterious Heavenly Venerate soon met Hao Jing. The two entered a private room and immediately erected a restrictive barrier, sealing away their voices and isolating the chamber from outside perception. Ordinarily, such precautions were formidable. Even a fifth-tier Heavenly Venerate would find it almost impossible to hear their conversation without directly breaking through. And the moment someone smashed through the barrier, it could hardly still be called eavesdropping. Unfortunately for Hao Jing and Luo Tongfang, Ling Han had been preparing long before either of them entered the room. He had already arranged his own methods around the entire tea house. Their restrictive barrier had merely been erected atop a formation that Ling Han controlled from the beginning. To the conspirators, the chamber was sealed. To Ling Han, it was an open book. This worked not only because Ling Han had prepared first, but because his strength completely surpassed theirs. Had the difference been smaller, Luo Tongfang, a genuine first-tier Heavenly Venerate, would almost certainly have sensed that something was wrong. Inside the private room, completely unaware that every word was being heard, Luo Tongfang relaxed.
Junior brother Hao, it's been many years. You've already reached the pseudo-Heavenly Venerable tier. Once Master emerges from seclusion, he'll certainly be pleased.
Luo Tongfang was indeed the senior brother Luo whom Hao Jing had mentioned, the first-tier Heavenly Venerate who had secretly entered Ling City.
Thank you, senior brother Luo. But a pseudo-Heavenly Venerate is still only a pseudo. How could I compare with you?
Now that you've taken this step, how far away can the first tier truly be?
Outside, Hunyu's patience immediately began to crumble. Her little fist tightened as the two men continued exchanging pleasantries instead of discussing the conspiracy she had come to hear.
Why are they talking in circles? Aren't they going to discuss the important part if they keep dragging this out? The audience will revolt.
Ling Han gently patted her head.
Have some patience.
There was no need for Ling Han and Hunyu to whisper. The two people inside had no possibility of hearing them. At last, the meaningless courtesies ended.
You obtained it.
The tension hidden in Hao Jing's voice revealed how important the answer was to him.
You pestered me again and again. How could I return empty-handed still? Is all this really necessary just to deal with a first tier?
Senior brother Luo, never underestimate Ling Han. He isn't an ordinary first tier. His battle strength can contend with the third tier. He's a genuine monster.
Seriously, a first tier rivaling the third tier?
Luo Tongfang's disbelief was understandable. In the hierarchy of Heavenly Venerates, every tier represented a frightening gulf. For a first tier to cross two such boundaries in battle sounded almost absurd.
You were secluded while breaking through to the first tier, so you missed what has happened recently. But I can tell you this with certainty: Ling Han's abnormality exceeds even what I can properly understand.
Luo Tongfang slowly accepted the warning. He still found the claim difficult to believe, but he also knew Hao Jing was not the kind of person who would exaggerate an enemy's strength without reason.
Then will the blood clay truly be enough to restrain him?
Now even Luo Tongfang sounded uneasy. A cruel confidence entered Hao Jing's voice.
This blood clay came from a fourth-tier Heavenly Venerate who was destroyed by Hysteria's attack. His entire body collapsed into a pool of this substance. Its corrosive power is so terrifying that even my father fears it. Even a fifth-tier Heavenly Venerate can be affected, so killing a first tier with it should be effortless. And if we control the amount, we don't even have to kill him immediately. The blood clay can fill a Heavenly Venerate with sickness and agony, forcing him to devote all his strength to resisting it. Once that happens, he'll have nothing left to fight us.
The danger was finally clear. Hao Jing was not planning to defeat Ling Han through cultivation. He intended to bypass strength altogether. Blood clay was a weapon of attrition and internal collapse, something capable of turning even overwhelming battle power into a meaningless advantage if Ling Han were poisoned before realizing what had happened. Luo Tongfang shook his head.
Junior brother, after all these years, you still can't restrain your obsession with women. Otherwise, your achievements might have surpassed mine long ago.
Hao Jing merely laughed.
If a man spends eternity doing nothing but cultivating, then what joy is there even in possessing limitless lifespan?
Then his plan became uglier still.
After Ling Han died, you extract his soul and refine the Heavenly Venerable Seal. I'll handle the others. I'll present myself as their rescuer, and Ling Zai will never suspect that I was responsible for destroying her family, or that I intended to place her mother completely under my control.
Hao Jing's scheme revealed more than greed. He wanted to manufacture gratitude from a disaster he created himself, to become the apparent savior after secretly arranging the victim's ruin. In the jianghu, blades were dangerous, but a smiling face hiding such calculation could be far worse. Luo Tongfang's expression carried undisguised disdain. He clearly thought little of this junior brother whose ambitions were constantly clouded by personal obsession. Yet, Hao Jing was their master's only son, and that relationship was enough to keep Luo Tongfang involved.
When do we act?
As soon as possible. By now, I've completely integrated myself into the Ling Clan. No one suspects me. They would never imagine that I would poison their food.
Jiuwu Heavenly Venerates. They still bother eating.
You don't know that entire family loves eating.
Outside the room, Ling Han was momentarily left without words. Over the years he had been called a freak, a monster, and all manner of astonishing things. But to be summarized by his enemy as a glutton, that was a new insult entirely. Hu Nu, meanwhile, burst into delighted laughter.
Neu really is a glutton.
But her laughter vanished as quickly as it had appeared. Cold, killing intent replaced it.
Ling Han, let's go kill those two bad guys.
Ling Han nodded.
All right.
The waiting game was over. Ling Han had never tolerated Hao Jing because he feared him. He had tolerated him because he wanted the hidden accomplice, the weapon, and the full conspiracy to reveal themselves. Luo Tongfang had now arrived. The blood clay had been confirmed. Their intentions had been spoken aloud. Every piece Ling Han wanted was finally on the board. Inside the private room, Hao Jing and Luo Tongfang continued discussing the finer details of their attack, believing themselves protected by layers of secrecy. Then came a knock at the door. Both men froze and exchanged a startled glance. Who could possibly be outside?
I'll answer it.
Luo Tongfang walked to the entrance and opened the door. The hinges gave a faint creak. Standing beyond the threshold were a young man and a striking young girl. Luo Tongfang was still maintaining his disguise as an ascending origin tier cultivator. Nothing about his outward aura suggested that a first-tier Heavenly Venerate stood behind that harmless appearance.
You are.
From deeper inside the room, Hao Jing looked toward the doorway. His face changed instantly.
Oh, Ling Han.
Only moments earlier, Hao Jing had been calmly discussing how Ling Han would die, how his soul would be stripped of Heavenly Venerable Seals, and how his family would be deceived afterward. Now the very man marked for death was standing at the door. There are few sights more terrifying to a conspirator than the intended victim appearing before the trap has even been sprung. Hao Jing's shock carried an even darker implication. If Ling Han was here, how much had he already heard? Boom. Luo Tongfang reacted without hesitation. His disguise shattered beneath an eruption of true cultivation, and the vast pressure of a first-tier Heavenly Venerate exploded outward like a chaotic tidal wave, sweeping across the surroundings. The secret meeting had ended. The assassination plot had been exposed, and now, inside a quiet tea house in Ling City, a first-tier Heavenly Venerate had unleashed his full aura before the very monster Hao Jing had warned him never to underestimate. The next exchange would no longer be one of schemes and whispered plans. It would be decided by power. Luo Tongfang stood before Ling Han with the aura of a first-tier Heavenly Venerate restored to its peak. His bearing was steady, his confidence almost tangible, as though the vast heavens themselves had already confirmed the outcome of this confrontation.
Ling Han, is it you've been looking forward to meeting you for a long time?
To Luo Tongfang, this confidence was hardly arrogance without foundation. Which Heavenly Venerate had not climbed over countless geniuses and shattered impossible barriers to reach such a height? Since both men stood at the first tier, why should he believe himself inferior? This was the pride shared by supreme cultivators. Realm often determines the battlefield before fists were ever raised, and Luo Tongfang trusted that ancient rule completely. His mistake was simple. Ling Han had never been a man who could be measured by ordinary rules. Luo Tongfang had approved of Hao Jing's scheme to poison the Ling Clan with blood clay. Yet deep in his bones he still despised the need for such methods. If blades had to cross, he believed he could crush Ling Han openly and prove his superiority face to face. Then, without warning, an explosion tore through the chamber. Hao Jing blasted a hole straight through the wall and shot through it like a fleeing arrow, disappearing into the distance without even attempting to stand beside Luo Tongfang. For one breath, Luo Tongfang simply stared. Then humiliation ignited into fury. Hao Jing's retreat carried a meaning more insulting than any spoken mockery. He did not merely doubt Luo Tongfang's chances of victory. His actions declared that Luo Tongfang was not even qualified to contend with Ling Han. For a Heavenly Venerate whose pride had been forged through an age of dominance, that silent judgment struck harder than a slap across the face. Luo Tongfang no longer wanted merely to win. He wanted Ling Han's severed head as proof that Hao Jing had been wrong. His gaze turned baleful. In his mind, he could already imagine hurling Ling Han's head before Hao Jing and watching the other man's expression crumble. Ling Han, however, remained completely relaxed. He did not even bother chasing the fleeing Hao Jing.
Oi, 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 don't let your mind wander.
There was no reason for Ling Han to pursue, who knew had already gone after Hao Jing. A pseudo-Heavenly Venerate attempting to escape from a second-tier Heavenly Venerate was already absurd enough. Unless one possessed battle power as monstrous as Ling Han's, such a gap was almost impossible to overturn. Luo Tongfang stepped forward, his anger transforming into absolute conviction.
Ling Han, at the same cultivation level, I, Luo Tongfang, won't lose to anyone.
Ling Han merely nodded.
Oh, do you have any last words?
Die.
Luo Tongfang attacked with everything he had. A Heavenly Venerable Seal immediately pulsed within his hand. One of the 7 commonly known seals. Its power surged through his body, multiplying his strength 4-fold. At the same instant, he activated a secret technique. Blood-colored radiance gathered behind him, condensing into a savage wolf that raised its head toward the heavens. Its howl seemed to tear through the desolate firmament. A crimson moon appeared above, radiating an oppressive air of misery and ruin. The blood wolf swallowed the moon, and Luo Tongfang moved. His right hand transformed into a vicious wolf paw as he charged straight toward Ling Han, destructive force roaring around him like a crimson storm. A 4-fold amplification, a Heavenly Venerable Seal, and a killing secret technique. Against an ordinary first tier, this assault would have been terrifying. Luo Tongfang had not held back. The problem was that his opponent's foundation had already exceeded what the words first tier were supposed to represent. Ling Han only shook his head. Then he casually swatted his palm forward. The collision was devastatingly one-sided. Luo Tongfang's attacking arm shattered first. Ling Han's palm continued forward without losing momentum and slammed directly into his chest. Explosive power erupted. Luo Tongfang's chest collapsed under that single strike. and the rest of his body broke apart immediately afterward. Shock froze across his face. They were both first-tier Heavenly Venerates, yet he had failed to withstand even one palm. Only now did Luo Tongfang truly understand Hao Jing's decision to flee. Hao Jing had not acted out of cowardice toward an equal opponent. He had recognized a gulf in battle power so enormous that staying behind would amount to suicide. The difference between Luo Tongfang and Ling Han was not a narrow gap in technique. It was like Earth staring up at heaven. Luo Tongfang's remaining expression became vacant and spiritless. One question alone seemed to haunt him. If their realms were identical, how could their strength be so incomparably different? Ling Han had no interest in answering that question. He searched Luo Tongfang and swiftly retrieved a spatial celestial tool. His divine sense swept through it, and moments later, he extracted a jade vial. Before he even touched what lay inside, instinctive apprehension stirred within him. Whatever this substance was, every instinct warned him not to make direct contact with it. Could this be the flesh of a Heavenly Venerate that had been corroded by hysteria? Ling Han carefully removed the stopper. Thin strands of black air immediately drifted from the vial. They twisted and changed shape in midair, becoming sinister silhouettes resembling poisonous spiders, centipedes, and other venomous creatures. Ling Han crouched beside Luo Tongfang's severed head. Because Ling Han's power continued suppressing him, Luo Tongfang could neither reconstruct his body nor recover from his wounds. The instant Luo Tongfang saw the open vial approaching, however, his previous shock transformed into genuine terror.
Get that thing away from me.
His panic was even greater than when Ling Han had shattered his body. That reaction alone revealed how horrifying the blood clay truly was. A Heavenly Venerate could face bodily destruction and still struggle to remain calm. Yet merely seeing this substance near him stripped away Luo Tongfang's dignity. Ling Han chuckled.
Since you're so terrified of it, why did you bring it all the way here? You even intended to feed it to me. I may enjoy eating, but I'm not an absolute fool. Did you really think I would swallow something like this?
Luo Tongfang knew that if Hao Jing's plan had truly been carried out, Hao Jing would certainly have found some method to conceal the blood clay's aura and prevent anyone from noticing anything unusual. Yet he did not dare voice that argument now. Instead, after struggling against his pride, the Heavenly Venerate lowered himself and begged.
Friend, I was also deceived by others. Please spare me this one time.
For someone standing at the level of a Heavenly Venerate, those words cost more than ordinary people could imagine. Shame burned across Luo Tongfang's face, but survival outweighed dignity. Ling Han laughed.
Others travel hundreds of miles to deliver a small gift, where the present may be trifling, but the sentiment runs deep. You, however, traveled tens of thousands of kilometers to bring me poison. What should I call that?
Luo Tongfang had no answer. His only hope was to separate himself from the scheme. Hao Jing was the true mastermind. Luo Tongfang wanted to portray himself as no more than the man who had carried the dangerous material here.
I genuinely didn't know about my junior brother's plans at all.
Ling Han did not argue. Instead, he poured out a tiny amount of the black blood clay and spread it across one of Luo Tongfang's severed arms. Under normal circumstances, the severed limb of a Heavenly Venerate could remain vigorous and undecayed for an extraordinary length of time. But the moment the blood clay touched it, decay spread with horrifying speed. Flesh rotted, vitality collapsed. In only moments, the entire arm dissolved into a pool of blood. The experiment confirmed what instinct had already warned Ling Han. This was no ordinary poison. It could corrode even the flesh of a Heavenly Venerate, attacking a level of existence that common toxins could never hope to touch. Ling Han looked toward Luo Tongfang and slowly shook his head, saying nothing. Then a familiar voice rang out from nearby.
Ling Han exclamation Niu has captured him.
Hu Niu leaped into the scene with a person firmly held in her grasp. It was Hao Jing. A pseudo-Heavenly Venerate had tried to escape from a second-tier Heavenly Venerate. The conclusion had never truly been in doubt. Hu Niu casually tossed Hao Jing onto the ground. Ling Han smiled at him.
The first time I saw you, I said that good times don't last long. Looking at you now, it seems my prediction was correct.
Hao Jing clenched his teeth. Frustration and disbelief twisted across his face. He could not understand where he had failed. For all these years, his behavior had remained normal. He had acted carefully, revealed nothing suspicious, and believed he had left no flaw for anyone to seize. At last, wearing a bitter, aggrieved smile, he asked the question tormenting him.
How did you see through me?
Ling Han saw no reason to conceal the truth. He calmly explained the entire chain of events that had caused him to become suspicious. And when Hao Jing finally understood, he nearly exploded from anger. He had not exposed himself through some careless mistake. He had not accidentally revealed his intentions. Instead, Ling Han had noticed something wrong because he paid extraordinary attention to anything involving his daughter. From Hao Jing's perspective, this was almost more infuriating than being defeated by superior scheming. His elaborate deception had not collapsed beneath some legendary investigative method. It had collided with Ling Han's fierce protectiveness toward his family. His resentment surged. Ling Han's daughter was already a celestial king, yet Ling Han still watched over her with such vigilance that Hao Jing's carefully maintained disguise had been exposed by coincidence. Ling Han, however, considered Hao Jing's frustration completely pointless.
There's no need to feel so aggrieved. Even if you hadn't targeted my darling daughter, did you truly think a first-tier Heavenly Venerate and a pseudo-Heavenly Venerate could defeat 3 Heavenly Venerates among? Those 3 are a third tier and a second tier. What exactly were you dreaming about?
That was the deeper flaw in Hao Jing's plan. The blood clay was terrifying, but his scheme relied on deception, succeeding against opponents whose raw cultivation advantage was already overwhelming. Once the poison was exposed, there was no second layer of strength capable of rescuing the operation. The blood clay was indeed formidable. It could corrode Heavenly Venerable flesh with frightening speed. Yet actually poisoning Ling Han with it was another matter entirely. Hao Jing finally lowered his head.
I admit defeat. What do you want from me?
Ling Han actually looked surprised.
You truly believe I'll spare you merely because you offer me something in exchange?
Hao Jing snorted. If pleading would not work, then there remained one final shield he could raise, the name behind him.
My father is Hao Tianjin, a 5th-tier Heavenly Venerate. If you kill me, my father will hunt you down no matter where you flee or hide.
Ling Han actually fell into thought.
Have I killed the son of a 5th-tier Heavenly Venerate before?
After considering it for a moment, he shook his head.
I've killed far too many people, so I genuinely can't remember. No matter. After I kill you, I'll definitely have killed the son of a 5th-tier Heavenly Venerate.
Hao Jing stared at him in disbelief.
Yo.
He could not comprehend how Ling Han could treat such a terrifying consequence with such casualness.
Aren't you afraid of my father seeking revenge?
Ling Han's expression did not change.
Even if I were afraid, do you think I would forgive vermin who targeted my family?
He shook his head.
Trash like you is better off dying early and reincarnating early.
Here lay the line Hao Jing had failed to understand. Threatening Ling Han personally might have created room for calculation, but targeting his family erased that possibility. To Ling Han, Hao Tianjin's 5th-tier status was a future danger. Hao Jing was a present enemy, and Ling Han had never been the kind of cultivator who allowed fear of tomorrow to dictate whom he spared today. Ling Han punched. There was no prolonged struggle and no final chance to bargain. Hao Jing's body was instantly destroyed beneath the force of that single blow. The scheme of blood clay had ended before it could poison the Ling Clan, but its consequences were far from insignificant. Luo Tongfang was dead. Hao Jing was dead. And somewhere beyond this battlefield stood Hao Tianjun, a fifth-tier Heavenly Venerate whose son would never return. If vengeance followed, then this seemingly decisive victory might only be the opening stroke of a far greater storm. Cold sweat drenched Luo Tongfang. His body was already gone, leaving only a severed head, yet even that was enough for terror to crawl across his face. Hao Jing had died before his very eyes, crushed without mercy. And now Luo Tongfang understood with perfect clarity that his own fate rested entirely within Ling Han's palm. He was a mighty Heavenly Venerate, an existence lofty enough that even heaven itself had once seemed beneath his feet. Yet at this moment, all that grandeur meant nothing. This was the cruelest humiliation for an expert of Luo Tongfang's level. In every former crisis, strength had given him a path forward. As long as cultivation remained, hope remained. But before Ling Han, even the right to struggle had been stripped away. Still, Luo Tongfang retained the final shred of pride belonging to a Heavenly Venerate. He knew Ling Han would never spare him, so he refused to disgrace himself by begging. Ling Han raised a hand. There was no grand technique, no earth-shaking display, only one casual palm strike. Bang! Luo Tongfang's head was shattered. Ling Han had no intention of leaving such an enemy alive.
Die. There's nothing fun left to play with again.
Hu Nu pouted in disappointment. Ling Han merely smiled and patted her head.
There are plenty of interesting things in this world. We'll find something else later.
Hu Nu's eyes immediately brightened, and before Ling Han could react, she seized him and dragged him away.
Ling Han, let's go have a baby.
The following day, Ling Han told the Empress everything that had happened. Her reaction was explosive. Fury surged through her like a royal storm, and even Hao Jing's death did little to satisfy her anger. Had there been anything left to punish, she would gladly have made him suffer further. Ling Shi, however, was deliberately kept ignorant of the truth. She returned to the martial academy alone. Ling Han simply told her that Hao Jing had already departed and would not be returning with her. The lie was necessary. If Ling Shi knew too much, one careless word could expose everything.
Hao Jing's father is still in seclusion. Once he emerges, he will certainly come, seeking revenge.
A Heavenly Venerate with a direct bloodline connection should have little difficulty tracing this place.
Ling Han nodded. Their conclusion was simple.
Then we leave again.
Ling City had never been intended as a permanent home. It had been constructed largely for Hao Jing's benefit, and with that matter settled, Ling Han had no reason to anchor himself there while inviting vengeance of another Heavenly Venerate. Retreating was not fear. It was refusing to fight a useless battle on an enemy's terms. Ling Han sent word to those who needed to know. 1 month later, his group quietly departed and vanished toward another region. This time, Ling Han truly attempted to settle down. He chose a secluded land of peaceful mountains, flowing rivers, and scenery so tranquil that it seemed untouched by the struggles of the cultivation world. There he cultivated for more than 100,000 years. And eventually, restlessness returned. For an ordinary cultivator, 100,000 years of uninterrupted peace might have been a priceless blessing. For Ling Han, it revealed a problem. His progress under such quiet conditions was simply too slow. At this rate, reaching the 7th tier could consume an unimaginable span of time. No meaningful disturbances came from his clones either. There were no storms to confront, no opportunities to seize, and no great changes to investigate. So Ling Han took the Empress and Hu Nu and headed out once more. Their destination was the large black dog. And considering that dog's legendary talent for stumbling into trouble, Ling Han had good reason to suspect that wherever it was, boredom would not survive for long. The three first returned to the martial academy, where Ling Han met Ling Jianshui. Father and son spent some time speaking before Ling Han finally asked about the large black dog. By coincidence, the dog had been searching for Ling Han as well. Unable to discover where Ling Han had secluded himself, it had simply remained at the academy waiting.
Damn dog, if you've been deliberately waiting for me, then nothing good can have happened, right?
Nothing good thighs is far beyond that exclamation. Something enormous has happened. The whole world is nearly doomed.
The large black dog jumped around in agitation, its usual shameless energy carrying an unmistakable edge of alarm.
Even if the heavens collapse, aren't there taller people who can hold them up?
That's exactly the problem. Exclamation. The tall ones are the ones causing the trouble.
The humor vanished from Ling Han's expression.
Explain.
It all started after the threat from hysteria was removed. Without that great enemy pressing everyone from outside, the selfish and vicious instincts buried inside people began surfacing.
Ling Han glanced sideways at him.
You're describing yourself, aren't you?
The large black dog responded with an extremely rude gesture, then continued.
When there is no external enemy, internal conflict takes its place. Supreme prodigies had already been disappearing without explanation before, but now the situation has become far worse. Groups of Heavenly Venerates are openly forming alliances. They hunt other Heavenly Venerates, kill them, and seize their Heavenly Venerable Seals.
Ling Han's eyes sharpened.
They actually dare to do that openly. You're not afraid.
The 7th-tier Heavenly Venerates were all stationed at the realm battlefield, but that did not mean the world had been left without guardians. 6th-tier experts such as Zhou Heng, Chu Hao, and Lin Xiaoyang still remained. That was precisely why the news was so disturbing. Ordinary Heavenly Venerates might become greedy, but openly hunting their own kind required either overwhelming confidence or the belief that even the strongest authorities could not stop them.
Afraid of what? Do you know who started this way?
Who?
A 6th-tier Heavenly Venerate. Heavenly Venerate 10,000 Shadows.
The dog explained that 10,000 shadows had gathered a substantial force beneath his banner. Together they slaughtered other Heavenly Venerates and seized their seals with almost no restraint.
That old geezer seems completely certain the 7th tiers cannot free themselves from the realm battlefield. Now everyone is frightened. Many Heavenly Venerates have been forced into alliances simply to survive, and some of those alliances have begun hunting outsiders themselves, just like the 10,000 Shadows Alliance.
The situation had become a vicious cycle. Fear created alliances. Alliances created power. Power awakened greed, and greed produced still more slaughter. Once Heavenly Venerable Seals became prizes to be taken from corpses, trust between experts could collapse almost overnight. Then the large black dog's expression became unusually solemn.
Grandpa Dog rushed to find you because you're carrying more than one Heavenly Venerable Seal. That makes you an obvious target. You have to be extremely careful.
Ling Han nodded slowly. He did possess an extraordinary escape method, the ability to traverse dimensions freely. But even that trump card could not be used recklessly. Crossing dimensions could save him from terrifying enemies, but it also carried the possibility of encountering hysteria, and compared with facing a 7th-tier Heavenly Venerate, running into hysteria could be an even greater nightmare. His strongest escape route, therefore, came with a danger severe enough that it had to remain a last resort.
Ling Han, should we find ourselves a powerful backing too? Other people might be unreliable, but Zhu Heng, Zhu Hao, and their group are different. Why don't we go to them?
Ling Han considered the proposal carefully.
I do need to meet Senior Zhu Heng and the others. I want to know what they think about this chaos.
Ling Han, the Empress, Hu Nu, and the large black dog departed together, heading toward the ancestral territory of the Lin Clan. They did not know where Zhou Heng or Chu Hao currently were, but Lin Xiaoyang should still be guarding the Lin Clan. Yet when the Lin Clan finally appeared before them, the atmosphere was nothing like the calm dignity of an ancient great clan. The entire ancestral land was under severe guard. Defenses were tightened, cultivators watched every approach, and the clan behaved as though a terrifying enemy might descend at any moment.
Who goes there?
Ling Han, I have come specifically to meet Lord Lin Xiaoyang.
After a short wait, a man shot out from the mountains like a streak of light and landed before the group. He examined Ling Han and his companions carefully before finally clasping his hands.
Lord Ling, please forgive the discourtesy. These are extraordinary times, and we have no choice but to be cautious.
I understand.
That simple exchange said more about the state of the world than any rumor could. If even the powerful Lin Clan had tightened its gates and scrutinized every visitor, then the conflict among Heavenly Venerates had already reached a truly dangerous stage. The group was escorted into the clan. Before long, Lin Piaoshui appeared personally and led them deeper into the ancestral grounds to meet Lin Xiaoyang. Many years had passed, and Lin Piaoshui had not stood still. She had already advanced into the second tier, an astonishing rate of progress even among prodigies. At last, they entered Lin Xiaoyang's presence.
Greetings, Lord Lin.
I know why you have come.
Ling Han did not waste time circling around the matter.
My lord, we suspect that hysteria deliberately created the energy storm precisely so that we would turn our blades upon one another. If that is true, why has this internal slaughter not been stopped?
The large black dog immediately shot Ling Han a frantic look. In the dog's eyes, Ling Han was being terrifyingly direct. Lin Xiaoyang was a sixth-tier elite, an existence standing near the summit of the cultivation world. Most people would choose every word with extreme care before questioning someone of such stature. Ling Han simply asked what he wanted to know. Lin Xiaoyang, however, showed no anger. Instead, he released a heavy sigh.
Do you know how many sixth-tier Heavenly Venerates exist in the entire world?
Ling Han's eyes narrowed.
How many?
307.
The number hung in the air like a mountain.
Junior brother Shu. Junior brother Chu. And I have coordinated our efforts as much as possible. But with only the three of us, there is simply no way to suppress internal conflict involving so many sixth tiers.
3 powerful sixth tiers sounded formidable, until placed against a world containing 307 experts of the same realm. The problem was no longer one rogue alliance. It was a vast balance of power beginning to fracture across the entire cultivation world. Ling Han pondered for a moment before speaking again.
Then someone must be deliberately feeding this chaos. Such a situation could not have erupted to this extent without a hand pushing it from behind. Is Heavenly Venerate 10,000 Shadows the one responsible?
Lin Xiaoyang shook his head.
We investigated 10,000 Shadows ourselves. According to what we have uncovered, he is not actually the true mastermind. The person manipulating events from behind the curtain remains deeply concealed.
That revelation changed everything. 10,000 Shadows was terrifying enough as a sixth tier who openly organized the slaughter of Heavenly Venerates. But if even he was only part of a larger scheme, then the true enemy was someone capable of moving supreme experts like pieces across a board while remaining unseen. Ling Han's expression darkened as an even more dangerous possibility entered his mind.
Could that person have secretly joined forces with hysteria and become its pawn?
The thought was almost unbelievable. To ignite turmoil on such a scale, the hidden instigator would almost certainly need to possess at least 6th tier strength. Could an elite who had cultivated all the way to the 6th tier truly lack the awareness to understand what cooperation with hysteria meant? Or was there an even darker reason behind this sudden descent into chaos? One thing was already certain. The greatest danger was no longer a monster attacking from beyond the dimensions. The blades of the Heavenly Venerates had turned inward, and somewhere in the shadows, an unseen hand was encouraging them to keep cutting. Lin Xiaoyang slowly shook his head. Even a 6th tier Heavenly Venerate like him could not make sense of the madness spreading through the world. Anyone with even a trace of reason should understand that cooperating with hysteria was no alliance at all. It was like sharing a road with a beast whose final purpose was to swallow the entire Genesis world, replace it, and rise as the supreme existence governing everything. Those who helped such a creature would eventually become its food as well. Yet there was another question, one far more disturbing. If no hidden hand had deliberately stirred the flames, could the situation truly have deteriorated this far? Lin Xiaoyang could not find the culprit. Neither could Zhou Heng nor Chu Hao. If even 6th tier elites standing near the summit of the martial world could not uncover the truth, Ling Han naturally had even fewer clues. The 6th tier Heavenly Venerates he personally knew were precisely Lin Xiaoyang and the others. Suspecting them without evidence would be absurd.
The outside world is in chaos. Stay here for the time being.
Ling Han considered the proposal. There were no new Heavenly Venerable Seals drawing him elsewhere, and cultivation did not care whether one meditated beneath this mountain or another. Remaining under the Lin Clan's protection was the sensible choice.
Thank you, Senior.
Ling Han immediately began relocating everyone from Ling City. At the same time, he found ways to send word to the Rain Emperor and the others who were still traveling through the vast world. Once the migration was complete, a new Ling City rose near the territory of the Lin Clan. The city still stood more than 5,000 kilometers from the Lin Clan itself. Yet that distance meant little to beings of their level. It lay deep inside the Lin Clan's sphere of protection, almost within the heart of their controlled territory. This was the advantage of standing beneath a towering tree. Even if every 7th tier Heavenly Venerate was believed to be trapped on the realm battlefield, the mere fact that a 7th tier ancestor still lived was enough to frighten countless enemies away from his place of enlightenment. Reputation itself had become a weapon. With Ling City settled, Ling Han closed his doors and entered seclusion. There were no Heavenly Venerable Seals for him to seize, no shortcut waiting on the horizon. If opportunity would not come to him, then he could only grind forward with the oldest weapon of cultivation, time. 100 million years passed. To mortals, such a span would erase dynasties, mountains, and entire civilizations. To Heavenly Venerates, it was merely a long stretch of closed-door cultivation. Even to celestial kings, 100 million years was hardly unimaginable. But outside Ling Han's secluded chamber, the heavens had become drenched in blood. The hunt for Heavenly Venerable Seals had escalated into a terrifying slaughter. 4th tiers and 5th tiers were hunted, ambushed, and killed. Even 6th tier Heavenly Venerates were no longer untouchable. At least 3 6th tier Heavenly Venerates had been surrounded and slain. That single piece of news shattered an ancient assumption. A 6th tier stood directly beneath the 7th tier. With all known 7th tiers locked in war against hysteria on the realm battlefield, 6th tiers should have been the supreme powers of the outside world. Yet even they could die. Once that truth became undeniable, no expert could continue pretending that status alone guaranteed survival. No one knew exactly how those 3 had fallen. Some believed more than a dozen sixth tiers had joined forces and overwhelmed them through sheer numbers. Others whispered an even darker possibility, that a seventh tier had secretly intervened, striking with such overwhelming might that the victims never even gained the chance to flee. There was no proof, no explanation, no solution. And uncertainty was sometimes more frightening than an enemy standing openly before one's blade. Incomplete estimates suggested that roughly 20% of all Heavenly Venerates had died during those 100 million years. That number exceeded even the casualties suffered during active wartime on the realm battlefield. Jiuwu Heng and Chu Hao responded by bringing their own clansmen into the same protected region. Thus, three mighty sixth-tier Heavenly Venerates, Lin Xiaoyang, Jiuwu Heng, and Chu Hao, stood guard together. In another era, one sixth tier could have dominated countless lands and suppressed generations. Now 3 of them had to stand shoulder to shoulder, simply to sleep without wondering whether an alliance of killers would descend before dawn. That alone revealed how violently the balance of power had collapsed. Even their combined strength could not be considered completely secure. Other Heavenly Venerate alliances possessed 7 or 8 sixth tiers at the very least. The largest gathered more than a dozen. Lin Xiaoyang, Chu Hao, and Jiuwu Heng therefore continued searching for allies. Yet strength was not the only requirement. Trust was the true obstacle. The 3 men were apprentice brothers. Their bond had been tested across immeasurable years, so each could entrust his back to the others without hesitation. But how could they extend that same faith to a 4th sixth tier? And from the newcomer's perspective, the danger was equally obvious. Joining 3 apprentice brothers meant entering an alliance where the other 3 already formed an unbreakable unit. If they ever turned on the newcomer together, escape might be impossible. In a world where Heavenly Venerates were murdering one another for seals, trust had become rarer than treasure. Power could attract allies, but the stronger the alliance became, the more terrifying betrayal would be. Thus, even after 100 million years, the 3 sixth tiers still had not found suitable companions. Ling Han eventually emerged from seclusion and learned how far the situation had deteriorated. Then he turned around and entered seclusion once more. Ling Han had never been the kind of man who enjoyed surviving beneath another person's shelter. In his eyes, there was only one true guarantee of peace in a chaotic age. Not walls, not alliances of 7th tier ancestor, strength. Only strength that belonged to oneself could never be withdrawn. At first, he would emerge once every 200 or 300 million years to learn what had happened outside. Later, the intervals stretched beyond 1 billion years. Yet each time the doors opened, the answer waiting for him was almost unchanged. More Heavenly Venerates had died. Experts who once stood above countless beings were now being harvested as if they were ordinary crops in a field. Fortunately, the territory protected by Lin Xiaoyang, Jiuwu Heng, and Chu Hao remained untouched. 3 sixth tiers standing together were already formidable. Behind them also stood the shadow of Lin Luo, a living 7th tier Heavenly Venerate. Not a single enemy dared attack. But everyone understood one uncomfortable truth. The absence of an attack today did not mean safety tomorrow. More than 10 billion years passed before Ling Han finally pushed his cultivation to the late stage of the 1st tier. This time, his decision was absolute. He would enter seclusion again, and unless he reached the 2nd tier, he would not emerge. 1 billion years vanished, then 5 billion, then 10 billion more. In the blink of an immortal existence, more than 20 billion years had passed. During that vast stretch of time, Ling City no longer resembled the settlement that had first taken refuge beneath the Lin Clan. It flourished through generations. The Reign Emperor returned. Yi returned. Other elites came back one after another. Later, Jiuming, Huofurong, and Shichanzi also joined Ling City. They had all emerged from the celestial realm. When danger threatened the wider world, old origins became a reason to gather rather than remain scattered. Ling Han, however, remained behind closed doors. With him absent for such an unimaginable length of time, the Empress and Hu Nu eventually became bored with waiting and entered seclusion themselves. Generation after generation was born, cultivated, aged, and passed into history. Eventually, many among the newer generations no longer even knew that figures such as Ling Han and the Empress existed. To them, the famous Heavenly Venerates of Ling City were the Reign Emperor, Yi, Jiwuming, the large black dog, and the other experts who still walked openly among the people. There was something almost poetic about it. Ling Han had cultivated so long that the city bearing his legacy had begun to turn him into a legend. Power on this level no longer measured life in years, but in eras. Then, amid this long silence, startling news swept through the region. The Rong Clan and the Ling Clan were preparing to form an alliance with the Lin Clan, the Zhou Clan, and the Chu Clan. The ancestor of the Rong Clan was Rong Tianyu, a 6th-tier Heavenly Venerate. The ancestor of the Ling Clan was Ying Zhuyang, another 6th-tier elite. If both powers truly joined Lin Xiaoyang's side, the fragile defensive structure would change dramatically. 3 6th tiers would become 5. In an age where lone 6th tiers could be surrounded and killed, those 2 additional experts might represent the difference between being hunted and being feared. The negotiations soon brought another important figure into the Lin Clan's territory. His name was Rong Yang. Rong Yang was the son of Rong Tianyu and a 4th-tier Heavenly Venerate in his own right. He had cultivated for 7 epochs, rising from the Celestial King tier into the Heavenly Venerable tier, before steadily reaching the 4th tier. He was not as outrageously heaven-defying as Lin Yulian or Xin Chihu, yet his progress had been terrifyingly stable. That kind of steadiness should not be underestimated. A genius who occasionally explodes forward may dazzle the world, but a cultivator who advances relentlessly for epoch after epoch can be equally frightening. Rong Yang had already proven that his talent was no ordinary inheritance from a powerful father. This time, Rong Yang had come on behalf of Rong Tianyu to discuss the details of the alliance with the Lin Clan. Ling City could barely be regarded as belonging to the Lin Clan's wider faction, so the rumors naturally reached its streets as well.
I heard Rong Yang is going to marry Lin Pyoxu. They want to seal the alliance through marriage. What celestial maiden Pyoxu is getting merit heavens? My heart is shattered. And why are you collapsing, Evan, if Lady Lin Pyoxu doesn't marry Rong Yang? Do you think she would marry you? Damn it, am I not even allowed to dream?
The streets erupted with discussion. Some cared about the rumored marriage. Others cared only about the military significance behind it. After all, the addition of even one 6th-tier Heavenly Venerate to an alliance was enough to alter the calculations of countless powers. An alliance through marriage would also carry a meaning beyond ceremony. In a time when ordinary promises between 6th tiers were difficult to trust, binding 2 clans through blood and family could serve as another chain holding the alliance together. Whether that chain was truly strong enough was another question entirely. And while Ling City buzzed with gossip, another young man quietly entered its streets. His name was Rong Xinkuan. He was not alone. Beside him stood a man whose presence carried an old and dangerous history. Had Ling Han been there, recognition would have come instantly. Jiuwu Heavenly Venerate. Rong Xinkuan glanced toward the city around him before asking the question that revealed the true purpose hidden beneath his arrival.
I heard that Ling Han The master of Ling City once obtained a Heavenly Venerable Seal.
Jiuwu Heavenly Venerate gave a slight nod.
On the realm battlefield, Ling Han did indeed obtain a Heavenly Venerable Seal.
As those words left his mouth, a cold trace of cruelty flickered through Jiuwu Heavenly Venerate's eyes. And that tiny flash of malice changed the meaning of Rong Xinkuan's visit completely. The world had already seen Heavenly Venerates butcher one another for seals. Now a young man of the Rong Clan had arrived in Ling City asking specifically about Ling Han's treasure, with an old enemy standing at his side. That was not the beginning of harmless curiosity. It was the scent of trouble finding its way to Ling Han's own gate. Among the Heavenly Venerates who had risen from the celestial realm, there was one name that now seemed increasingly dim beneath the brilliance of the others. Jiuwu Heavenly Venerate. Wu Lei had already come close to entering the second tier, while he was still trapped within the comparatively small celestial realm, after arriving in the Flaming Frost realm, where the heavens were broader and the path of cultivation stretched farther. His strength soared. Not long ago, he had broken into the fourth tier. The celestial realm might have been limited, but that limitation acted like a furnace. Anyone capable of forcing their way into the first tier under such conditions could hardly be ordinary. Those who emerged from that place were, almost without exception, terrifying talents once given a greater world in which to grow. Green Flames was only slightly inferior to Wu Lei. He had long since reached the peak stage of the third tier, standing before the threshold of another breakthrough that might come at any moment. Sealed emotion was even more astonishing. He had actually created and cultivated a Heavenly Venerable Seal that belonged to him alone. His present cultivation was still below Wu Lei's, but his foundations hinted at something far more dangerous. A self-created Heavenly Venerable Seal was not merely another technique. It represented one's own understanding of the supreme path. Sealed emotion had started more slowly, yet precisely because he was carving out his own road, his future ceiling might be higher. He could eventually overtake Wu Lei, and even fifth tier was not beyond possibility. Then there was the Karmic Life Heavenly Venerable. He had only recently advanced into the third tier, yet his rise was equally terrifying. He had begun from the Celestial King tier, and within an astonishingly short period, stepped into the ranks of Heavenly Venerates. To cross that gulf so quickly was itself proof of monstrous potential. Cultivation speed could not reveal everything. But in an age where every great realm was a life-and-death barrier, such progress was impossible without extraordinary strength and comprehension. And Jiuwu. He had entered the third tier long ago. Yet after all those years, he still remained trapped at its early stage. His progress had nearly stagnated. Placed beside those who had once stood on comparable ground with him, his achievements looked painfully pale. These were turbulent times. Even a Heavenly Venerate could no longer remain completely detached from worldly struggles. Jiuwu had been forced to lower his head and enter beneath Rong Tianyu's banner. Under ordinary circumstances, the chances of Jiuwu crossing paths with Ling Han again would have been exceedingly small. Yet fate twisted strangely. Rong Tianyu formed an alliance with the Lin Clan, and Jiuwu happened to accompany the delegation that came this time. For Jiuwu, this was not merely an unexpected reunion. It was an opportunity. He had neither forgotten Ling Han nor abandoned his hostility. He simply lacked the power to act openly. So instead of drawing his own blade, he looked for another hand to hold it. That hand was Rong Hen. Rong Xinkuan was Rong Yang's cousin. His talent was nowhere near as monstrous as Rong Yang's, but the power of the Rong clan had carried him far. With formidable resources and an extraordinary background supporting him, he had cultivated all the way to the ninth heaven. Strength, however, had done little for his temperament. Rong Xinkuan was deeply self-centered. After arriving at the Lin Clan and learning that Ling Han was nearby, Jiuwu quietly began feeding Rong Xinkuan's arrogance. And what kind of man was Rong Xinkuan? In his mind, having an uncle who was a 6th-tier elite was almost the same as possessing invincibility himself. Thus, most of the world naturally appeared beneath his notice. He would not recklessly provoke colossal powers such as the Lin Clan or the Chu Clan. But the Ling Clan? In his eyes, they were insignificant. Their strongest expert was supposedly only a 2nd-tier Heavenly Venerate. Why should he care? If necessary, Jiuwu Heavenly Venerate alone should have been sufficient to sweep through them. Rong Xinkuan therefore formed a greedy plan. He would seize Ling Han's Heavenly Venerable Seal and present it to Rong Yang. This was not simple generosity toward his cousin. Rong Xinkuan understood perfectly well that Rong Yang held far greater weight in Rong Tianyu's heart. If he wanted a better future, then pleasing Rong Yang was one of the clearest paths available to him. Perhaps Rong Yang would reward him. Perhaps some heaven-defying fortune would descend upon him. Perhaps one day he too could cross the impossible barrier and become a Heavenly Venerate. Thus, with Jiuwu whispering fuel into the flames of his ambition, Rong Xinkuan came looking for Ling Han. Rong Xinkuan strode ahead with both hands clasped behind his back, every step filled with inherited arrogance. Jiuwu Heavenly Venerate followed closely, deliberately remaining half a step behind. That tiny difference in position pleased Rong Xinkuan greatly. Yet there was something he never understood. A true Heavenly Venerate possessed pride carved through countless tribulations. How could such an existence sincerely bow his head before a mere 9th heaven celestial king? Jiuwu's humility was an act, and Rong Xinkuan's arrogance prevented him from seeing the strings wrapped around his own limbs. Jiuwu was using him. His plan was viciously simple: let Rong Xinkuan take the lead. With Rong Xinkuan's arrogance and Ling Han's famously unyielding temper, the collision was almost guaranteed to become disastrous. Perhaps Rong Xinkuan would even be killed. And once that happened, Rong Yang would surely intervene. A 4th-tier Heavenly Venerate descending in fury, surely that would be enough to suppress a mere Ling City. And even if Rong Yang somehow failed, Jiuwu's scheme still had another layer. If something happened to Rong Yang, then the one enraged would be Rong Tianyu, a 6th-tier Heavenly Venerate. In Jiuwu's calculations, once that level of existence moved, Ling Han would have no path to survival. Jiuwu's most dangerous weapon here was not cultivation. It was borrowed hatred. He wanted to turn the pride of the Rong clan into a blade, then make Ling Han stand directly beneath its edge. Whether Rong Xinkuan survived hardly mattered to him. And when a schemer deliberately places an arrogant fool in front of a man like Ling Han, one can almost hear the thunder gathering before either side has even drawn a weapon. Ling Han's whereabouts were no secret. A few casual inquiries were enough. Before long, Rong Xinkuan and Jiuwu Heavenly Venerate arrived at Ling Manor. Rong Xinkuan looked at the estate before him and gave a disdainful smile. Without hesitation, he strode directly toward the main entrance. Naturally, guards stood watch before the gates. Seeing the unfamiliar visitors approach, one of them stepped forward.
So, who are you looking for?
The servants of Ling Manor had never developed the habit of bullying outsiders. Ling Han himself despised overbearing behavior, and so even with 3 Heavenly Venerates residing within the estate, those serving the Ling Clan remained courteous. Rong Xinkuan, however, did not even properly acknowledge the guard. As the nephew of a 6th-tier Heavenly Venerate, he believed reverence from others was almost his natural due. He cast the guard a condescending glance.
Tell Ling Han to come out and receive me on bent knee.
The guard's expression changed at once. Courtesy did not mean cowardice. The Ling Clan might not bully others, but neither would its people calmly allow someone to stamp upon their dignity. Everyone in Ling Manor knew Ling Han's temperament. If his people had done no wrong, he would stand behind them without hesitation, regardless of who stood opposite him. That knowledge gave the servants something more valuable than borrowed arrogance. It gave them confidence. They knew the master of Ling Manor would not sacrifice one of his own, merely to appease a powerful guest. And Rong Xinkuan's very first words had directly humiliated Ling Han. The guard could endure no more. With a metallic hiss, he drew his spear and leveled its point straight at Rong Xinkuan.
Immediately apologize, and withdraw your previous words.
Rong Xinkuan's expression only grew colder.
A mere servant actually dares to make demands of me.
He casually extended one hand. Power erupted. A gigantic black hand formed in the air and descended toward the guard like a dark mountain. The guard reacted instantly and attempted to counter, but the difference between them was merciless. He was merely at the ascending origin tier, while Rong Xinkuan was a ninth heaven celestial king. There was no genuine contest of strength here between an ascending origin cultivator and a ninth heaven celestial king. Lay a gulf so vast that courage alone could never bridge it. With a sharp impact, the giant black hand seized the guard and locked him helplessly within its grasp.
Beg for mercy, and I can spare your life.
The guard's answer was not surrender.
Tui.
He spat toward Rong Xinkuan. The insult never reached its target. A protective barrier of light stopped it in midair. Rong Xinkuan's brow twitched and killing intent spread outward.
You are courting death.
One thought was enough. The massive black hand clenched. With a brutal burst, the guard was crushed instantly, his body reduced to blood and shattered flesh before the gates of Ling Manor.
Trash that overestimated his own abilities.
Without another glance at the man he had killed, Rong Xinkuan continued toward the main doors. The killing revealed the depth of Rong Xinkuan's arrogance. He had not come merely to issue a challenge. In his mind, the life of someone beneath his status held almost no weight at all. And by spilling Ling Clan blood at its own gate, he had transformed a provocation into a blood debt. Suddenly, a figure descended from above and landed directly before him.
Who goes there to actually dare kill in the Ling Manor?
Rong Xinkuan studied the newcomer. The face before him resembled the image of Ling Han that he had seen before. Yet something was wrong. The man's cultivation appeared to be only ninth heaven.
You are Ling Han.
I am Ling Huo.
Ling Huo's gaze swept across the entrance. In an instant, he saw the blood that had not yet fully fallen to the ground. His expression hardened. With a brief act of sensing, he gathered the remaining fragments of the guard's soul. The events that had just occurred unfolded within his perception. The insult, the confrontation, the black hand, and the killing. Fury immediately surged through Ling Huo. This man had marched straight to the Ling Clan and slaughtered someone without hesitation. Such arrogance had already crossed beyond simple disrespect. Ling Huo himself was no ordinary cultivator. Long ago, Ling Han had obtained 9 source powers of heaven and earth. Later, he released them one after another, allowing those powers to develop their own consciousness. Ling Huo was one of these manifestations. A source power born from heaven and earth possessed a natural affinity with the celestial king tier. That was its blessing, but also its prison. Because such beings were themselves nurtured within regulations, they could not step beyond regulations. Ninth heaven was therefore their ultimate ceiling, and the Heavenly Venerable tier remained forever beyond reach. Ling Huo and the other source powers had once wandered the world freely. Only after all 9 reached ninth heaven and found themselves unable to advance any further did they return to the Ling Clan and establish themselves as followers of Ling Han. Now, seeing Ling Clan blood spilled at the gate, Ling Huo's fury was entirely genuine.
How dare you?
Rong Xinkuan merely looked at him with contempt.
Nothing but a mere servant, and he actually dared to spit at me. How could it be that he did not deserve to die?
He glanced over Ling Huo, hardly bothering to conceal his impatience.
Your surname is Ling. What relation do you have with Ling Han? Never mind. I could care less. Go and call Ling Han to come out and greet me on bent knee.
For an instant, Ling Huo was so furious that he almost laughed. A Ninth Heaven Celestial King was standing before Ling Manor and demanding that a first-tier Heavenly Venerate come out to receive him on bent knee. The disparity was almost absurd. Rong Xinkuan's confidence did not come from his own cultivation, but from the names standing behind him. He was effectively treating the power of a sixth-tier Heavenly Venerate as though it were his personal realm. If arrogance can be measured by the distance between one's true strength and one's imagined status, then Rong Xinkuan had already walked astonishingly far. Ling Huo had no intention of wasting further words.
It would be better for you to obediently let me apprehend you and wait quietly to be dealt with.
He attacked immediately, reaching out to seize Rong Xinkuan. Ling Huo had no fear of unleashing the power of a Ninth Heaven Celestial King right here at the gates. The Ling Manor was no ordinary estate. Several Heavenly Venerates had personally refined this place. Every brick and stone contained a condensed trace of Heavenly Venerable power. A clash between Ninth Heaven Celestial Kings might shatter mountains elsewhere, but here the battlefield itself had been strengthened by beings standing beyond regulations. Ling Huo could strike without worrying that the Ling Manor would collapse around them. And so the first true collision began. Not yet between Ling Han and Rong Xinkuan, but between two Ninth Heaven Celestial Kings standing over freshly spilled Ling Clan blood. Behind Rong Xinkuan waited Jiuwu's scheme. Behind Ling Huo stood the entire weight of Ling Manor. The arrogance that had walked casually through the gate was finally about to meet resistance.